Welcome back everyone. Today we are going to learn about a new JavaScript features called Error.isError. At first glance, it might seem like a small addition to the language, but it actually solves a real problem that developers have faced for years. The best part is that you don't need to understand advanced JavaScript concepts to use it. In this video, we'll go step by step, run code in the console and see exactly what happens. Let's get started. Now let's look at an example using try-catch. When we work with a try-catch block, the variable inside the catch block is usually called error. Because of that name, many beginners assume that it will always contain an error object, but that's not actually true. JavaScript allows us to throw almost any value. Let's see what that means. Here we are throwing the string. The catch block receives this string and prints it. Notice that this is not an error object, it's simply text. Even though the message looks like an error, JavaScript treats it as a regular string. Now we are throwing the number. Again, JavaScript accepts it without any problem. The catch block receives a number and display it. This means the variable called error doesn't necessarily contain an error object. It can contain almost anything. This time we are throwing an object. The object even contains a property called message server error. At first glance, it looks very similar to an error object, but appearances can be misleading. This is still a normal JavaScript object. It is not an error. Now we are creating an actual error object. This is the recommended way to report problems in JavaScript applications. Notice how the output looks different. This is a genuine error object. For many years, developers use the instance of error to verify whether a value was an error object. In this example, it returns true. That makes sense because we created an error. Let's try a different value. A string is not an error object. Therefore, the result is false. So far, everything looks good, but there is a hidden problem. Modern JavaScript applications can communicate with different environments. For example, iframes, browser tabs, workers, different JavaScript realms. Sometimes an error object can come from another environment. In those situations, instance of error may incorrectly return false. The value is still an error, but JavaScript can fail the check because it comes from different realm. You don't need to memorize the technical details. The important thing to remember is that instance of error is not always 100% reliable, and that's exactly why Error.isError was introduced. The purpose of this method is simple. It checks whether a value is truly an error object. If it is an error, the method returns true, otherwise it returns false. Let's test it. A string is not an error object. The method correctly returns false. Here, the result is true. This is exactly what we expect. The number 404 is not an error object. Again, the result is false. Even the object contains a message property, it is still not an error object. The method correctly identifies that. Let's finish with one practice example that tests multiple values at once. This makes the behavior very easy to understand. This example clearly shows what Error.isError does. It doesn't care whether the value looks like an error. It only returns true when the value is an actual error object. Everything else returns false. And this is a practical use case. When you receive a value you are not completely sure what it contains, you can use Error.isError before trying to access error-specific properties. This makes your code safer and easy to maintain. Let's quick recap. JavaScript allows us to throw strings, numbers, objects, and error objects. Because of that, we cannot automatically assume that a value code inside a catch block is a real error. For many years, developers relied on instance of error. While that works in many situations, it can fail when dealing with errors coming from different JavaScript environments. The new Error.isError method provides a more reliable solution. It returns true only for genuine error objects and false for everything else. If you're writing modern JavaScript, this is the method you will want to use. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.